They came at dawn, 3 men in gray jackets and fake county badges pounding my gate like they owned the road, shouting something about an inspection. I opened the door with one hand on my coffee, and for 3 seconds the world narrowed down to the glint on one of their wallets and the look in the tallest man's eyes like he already decided the verdict. My name's Ethan Walker. I live on Willow Ridge, and that morning changed everything I thought I knew about neighbors and who's supposed to protect you. I'd lived out here 6 years. Bought the place because I wanted space, enough trees to fake myself into being a hermit if I needed to, a small creek that taught me patience, a porch that held 100 slow sunrises. I'm not fancy. I fix fences, I mend a leaky roof, I drink coffee till the mug's part of my hand. Folks in town call me steady. Folks in town also called me an easy mark when the numbers get big and the land gets tempting. That's what this turned out to be, a negotiation that started with a knock and turned into a long, ugly calculus aimed at making me give up what I loved. At first it was small and stupid enough I almost laughed it off. A printed notice about a mailbox being half an inch too low, a letter complaining my fence slat didn't match the new HOA-approved color, color that the Elmwood HOA had decided on last month. I kept the letters in a drawer because I do things the old way. Paper, stamps, stubbornness. But then the little things stacked like rocks until they looked like walls. Cameras started showing up across the road, cheap little black domes, and someone left a flyer on my truck about a land survey. That's when your skin starts to feel watched. That's when you stop feeling accidental and start feeling targeted. Martha Keene came by one afternoon with a casserole and a smile that had been practiced in front of a mirror. President of Elmwood, immaculate nails, voice that sounds like a hymn if you squint. She asked me about the property like someone ordering a menu item. "How long have you owned this beautiful place?" she said, and held the casserole like evidence. I kept one eye on the casserole and the other on her hand. There was a folder beneath the casserole dish, crisp and businesslike. That's where politeness and knives meet, when hospitality carries paper that thinks it can take your home. She asked about my plans, joking about subdivisions, and when I said I had no plans, she smiled and said, "You know, sometimes these things are better handled by professionals." That line, that casual suggestion of handle, stuck like a burr. Things escalated fast after that. One night someone cut the main line to my well. Another morning I woke to find my gate chained open and a dozen cows from the neighbor's pasture standing in my yard like they'd RSVP'd for a wedding. I had to sleep in my truck for a week when my phone and internet were shut off, and when you're alone out here, the world without service is a loud place for fear. Then came the lowball offers. A man named Tommy Royce Broad, soft-spoken until he wasn't, sat at my kitchen table and slid an envelope across it with a number in ink that smelled like calculation, not kindness. "Take 3-2, Ethan," he said, tapping the paper like a metronome. "You don't want what's coming if you don't." He didn't raise a weapon. He didn't have to. Threats come in polite voices. I'm not a man who calls the sheriff at the drop of a hat. I've been older than impulsive for a while. But this felt different. There was a pattern to it, a choreography. I started keeping a notebook, the kind with a spiral and a stubborn spine. Date, time, who was there, what was said. I set up a cheap camera under my porch, not to be a vigilante, but because facts are stubborn in a way feelings aren't. The footage was grainy, daylight and security issue gray, but it showed conversations, hands, and the way Tommy and a woman with a glossy bob mapped the contour of my property like shoppers circling a piece of meat. Officer Danica Price from Redford County was the first law enforcement officer who didn't put me on hold when I described the litany of incidents. She listened, and then she came out, boots in my yard, notebook open like a shield. We played back a clip where Martha was coaching a neighbor on how to handle a confrontation, telling them exactly what inflammatory words to say to make me look unstable. That's a thing I never thought I'd hear in real life. A person scripting other people to break someone's life. I remember Danica looking at me and saying, "They're trying to make you panic. Don't let them rent your fear." It sounds corny, but sometimes a line like that keeps you from throwing your house keys in the river and walking. You want motive? It wasn't because they hated my azaleas. There were plans, polite, glossy plans pushed quietly through town meetings and backroom coffees. Summit Development had been sniffing these hills the way a guy with money sniffs auctions. Low, methodical, hungry. Elmwood's leadership got complimentaries, honors, and small tokens, a check here, influence there. The math was simple. Scare a handful of owners, force repairs and fines that bleed people dry by when the price bottoms. It's capitalism with a smile and a RICO statute waiting in the wings. There was a moment that changed the calculus. We staged a little sting, not me, the community. Lena Cruz, a lawyer with patience like a steel trap, suggested we flip the script. We invited a neighbor who'd been coached to confront me, recorded the conversation with backup cameras rolling. We caught Martha on tape rehearsing lines, coaching the neighbor about how to mention concerning behavior and danger to the community. It was an ugly rehearsal. Her voice was syrupy and precise. Say he yelled. Say he threatened. Say you felt afraid. When the footage played at the community meeting big screen, lights off, the whole town's attention like a weight, you could hear a pin drop. I watched neighbors' faces go from certainty to confusion to shame. The narrative they'd been told began to unravel. The press smelled the story, and like most presses, they loved the whisper of scandal. Martha ran with it. She planted an interview that painted me as the destabilizing figure, the troubled loner, language the press loves because it's simple and sells. I posted the uncut footage online, and suddenly it became argument versus evidence in a way social media can't ignore. People chose sides, some out of habit, some out of information, some out of loyalty. There's nothing clean about community fractures. They look like lines on a map that never quite fit together again. Then the arrests. It was almost anticlimactic. Summit's mid-level fixer caught on an airport camera moving a briefcase full of invoices. Tommy's men quietly detained while the evidence stacked like dry plates in a cupboard. Lena had threaded together contracts, shady invoices, and a paper trail that led from casserole dishes to corporate accounts. Federal investigators moved with a quiet, efficient anger, not drama, just the long, careful hammering down of law. Martha was removed from her leadership role. Some folks insisted it was political, some insisted it was justice. I don't live for verdicts. I live for the day I can sit on my porch and not flinch when a truck drives by. In the aftermath, there were settlements and statements, and lawyers eating well. Summit pled guilty to a series of civil and criminal charges. Restitution was ordered, although those numbers never quite buy back a lost season or a scarred sense of trust. We formed a neighborhood watch that actually felt neighborly. People who used to nod at each other in passing stayed to talk for longer than a minute. I found out small kindnesses matter. A bowl of stew left on my porch meant more when it didn't come with a folder under it. But here's the part that keeps me up. Justice doesn't erase the memory of being watched. The cameras came down, but there's a mark left in the place where my peace used to be. And Martha, removed from her title, facing charges, moved away, left behind a community divided. People who sided with her feel vindicated. People who stood with me feel like they were right. The town still hums with debates in the diner about whether what we did was brave or reckless, smart or vengeful. That's the open wound. The line between protection and paranoia, between community standards and coercion. It's messy, it's human. If you listen, you'll hear that this story isn't just mine. It's about land and money and the ways people can weaponize rules. It's about how an HOA can be a civic tool or a club that slices out a piece of someone's life. It's about how a small group with influence and a map can decide who gets to stay and who gets pushed out. And it's about how stubbornness, not foolishness, sometimes saves what we love. So tell me, have you ever seen a neighbor become an adversary? Do you think we did the right thing by exposing them? Or should we have handled it differently? Drop a comment with your take on justice versus community. Share a story if you've lived one. And if this hit a chord, share it with someone who lives under a homeowners association or owns a piece of land they're not ready to give up. I'll read them. I'll be on my porch with a mug, and I want to hear what you think.